Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley reporting to you, this time south of the Potomac from Chantilly, Virginia. And I am here covering the meeting of the financier oligarchy of the NATO zone, the Atlanticists and neo-Atlanticists and their degenerate progeny, meeting here at the Marriott Hotel, Marriott, in Westfields Road in Chantilly, Virginia. And I was here yesterday for the arrival of the finance oligarchs and the scrum that took place, the kind of court of miracles that developed at the entrance. I would stress a couple of points about Bilderberg. And I want you to understand, much of what is published about Bilderberg is disinformation. If you are Bilderberg, you want to have a controlled opposition to Bilderberg that puts out disinformation about what Bilderberg is actually doing. And some of the people who appear on the scene as distinguished veteran analysts of Bilderberg are actually tools of Bilderberg. They're willing to repeat nonsense that comes from so-called inside sources. I don't often build my house on inside sources. I use the absolute idea. You can tell from the list of people. You compare the world situation to the list of people that are there, the history of the specific groups, the mentality and profile of these individuals, and you get a pretty good idea. If you're in the German-speaking realm, I urge you to go to Kopfverlag, on the internet, KOPP. You will find my reports in German, along with photos, right? Photos of these finance oligarchs as they arrive. This is a significant cross-section of the ruling class, above all of NATO. It's not worldwide. There are some token Russians. We'll talk about some of the Russians. There are some token Chinese, but these are not the big figures. Concerning what they're worried about, the first thing I would say is these people are worried about Syriza. They are frightened by Alexis Tsipras of Greece. That's who scares them, with the plan to freeze debt payments for Greece, to stop privatizations, to roll back austerity, to restore worker rights and trade union rights. They are scared that on the 17th of June, the Syriza movement and Alexis Tsipras and his fine organizations will be able to take control of the Greek government. And not because they want to leave the euro, but because they want to stay in the euro. This is the other big disinformation line. We're told by James Tucker, and I don't know whether a little bird told him or whether he found this document in a hollow tree. We're told by James Tucker, supposedly a distinguished analyst, that the Bilderberg group is afraid that Greece will leave the euro. My God, go to Tarpley.net. Go back to the idea dinner at Monet's Caspian Heart in the late winter of 2010. You will see that the entire attack on the euro was planned by precisely these Anglo-American finance oligarchs and their continental European allies. The entire strategy of the Bilderberg group is save the dollar, save the pound by wrecking the euro. Their strategy is to bust up and destroy the existing nation states. Look at the British. They're doing it to themselves with the Scottish secession that's being touted, at least. The idea being all modern nation states must be destroyed. That's the secret of the Arab Spring. My Lord, we have essentially right-wing cliche mongers coming forward and telling us that what's going on inside Bilderberg is the opposite of reality. We're also told, and this is the most absurd of all, that people inside Bilderberg would like to eliminate Ron Paul, and that a conversation took place in the lobby. I guarantee you this is an absolute invention. And people who believe in such fairy tales and such idiotic drivel will have to answer me this question. Peter Thiel, Thiel, is a member of the Bilderberg steering committee. This predator, this young wolf of the new cyber speculator generation, right? Qualitatively degenerate compared even to the earlier generations of the Bilderberg. Peter Thiel gave Ron Paul's campaign, financed Ron Paul's campaign, to the tune of $2.7 million. Please explain why the Bilderberger steering committee, not just anybody, right, not the cleaning lady, but the steering committee of Bilderberg financed Ron Paul, obviously to spread the ideological poisons of Austrianism and libertarianism, and of course then to be the right-wing man for Romney, as we have analyzed, right? Without Ron Paul as right-wing man, Romney might not have won the Republican nomination. Romney won Michigan, to take just one example, by a paper-thin margin. Remember, Romney's home state, Michigan, he won it by, what, 0.25%, 0.5%, a wretched margin. Without Ron Paul and Ron Paul's attack ads against Santorum in that case, Romney would not have gone over the top. So I think this is absolute nonsense. In other words, we've got some right-wing libertarians, right-wing anarchists, and others who sit around and make up what they think is going on. Now, let's take a look at what may well be going on. We'll talk later. Are they talking about an immediate attack on Syria? They may well be. Are they talking about a coup d'etat in Athens in some form, right? Whether it's a colonel's coup, 1967 Papadopoulos style, or whether it's the Trichet financial receivership coup, pioneered by Rick Snyder, fascist governor of Michigan, or Rajoy, reactionary or neo-fascist prime minister of Spain, and now demanded by Trichet, right? The idea that you go into receivership and a dictator is appointed to rule over you. That is obviously one big thing. What to do about China, what to do about Russia, what to do about the BRICS, how to keep the dollar in this position of world dominance, and so forth. Concerning Russia, the indications from the Bilderberger Group are extremely ominous. You have Chubais, Anatoly Chubais. This is Mr. Privatization. This is the Austrian school, people. This is deregulation, privatization, the destruction of the social safety net, the rise of a generation of neo-feudal predatory oligarchs. Chubais is the mother of the Russian oligarchs, right? These other people, you know, Berezovsky, Patanin, Khodorkovsky, those are the spawn of the privatization and nomenclatura policies of Anatoly Chubais. So that's bad enough. But then Garry Kasparov, my lord, this indicates, I think, a real depravity, or I don't know what, of the Bilderbergers. No standards, right? As Nietzsche said, everything is allowed. Alles ist erlaubt. If Kasparov can come to the Bilderberger and rub elbows with the finance oligarchs, this is a dark day for them. He's a chess champion, right? Garry Kasparov, the chess champion. He's one of the leaders of the protest group. We'll get back more on this when we come back on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley in Chantilly, Virginia, just a few hundred yards, more or less, from the site of this infamous gathering of oligarchs. The question is, what are they doing there, right? It's not antiquarian lore that we need, but a strategic analysis. What's happening in there? As I've said before, I think these people decided 1 to 2 years ago that they want Romney for president. Now, this will change because they had created Obama, and they didn't choose Obama in 2008, in June 2008, when Obama and Hillary showed up at the same hotel for the same Bilderberger Group. They had chosen Obama in 1981, 1982 with Zbigniew Brzezinski and Samuel Huntington at Columbia University. At least they chose him as a part of a stable or kindergarten of up-and-coming young pals, operatives, whatever we can call them, that would be of use 20 to 25 years later on, and that's what we've seen. But now, it seems to me, they regard Obama's potential as being spent. The Obama death of 1,000 cuts, perhaps from the point of view of these oligarchs, is not quick enough. It does not deliver enough genocidal, savage austerity in the near term. who does propose such things? Well, of course, Ron Paul does, right? Ron Paul's $1 trillion of cuts is the most severe austerity plan of anybody. It's the most radical demand for genocide against the American people that we've seen. A lot of people need to wake up to these obvious facts. Romney would, of course, run as a moderate hedge fund hyena, and it's clear to me from the fact that the meeting is being held in a hotel owned by the Mormon Marriott family, right? The Marriotts, the Romneys, and the Huntsmans are the triumvirs of Mormon wealth, right? They are the ones who have the big bucks, and he's Willard Romney after J. Willard Marriott, right? The guy who made his fortune exploiting Hispanic cleaning ladies in his hotel. Here's the question now. If they want Romney, who might they want for vice president? Well, the indication seems to be Mitch Daniels. If you look at all the people who have come into discussion as a vice presidential candidate, at least so far, be it the senator from Gusanos down there, Rubio, be it the personal union of the CIA and the Pentagon in the form of General Petraeus, be it in the form of Condoleezza Rice, be it in the form of various other people who have been floated. It looks like Mitch Daniels is the one that's getting vetted by the Bilderberg group this time around because he's there. So who's Mitch Daniels? He is a reactionary, but like Romney, his veneer is that he's a moderate reactionary. Now let's also do the comparison. In Wisconsin, the fascist Walker did a frontal attack on the unions. He's called forth a significant protest movement, which still has a chance to win this coming Tuesday. If you're in Wisconsin, go out and vote. If you can help Wisconsin to go over the top, defeat Walker. Recall Walker at all costs. Get this other guy in, Barrett, no matter what. And, of course, not just Barrett, the gubernatorial candidate. We're for Kevin Barrett for Congress in the Madison, Wisconsin area, right? So we got Barrett now and Barrett later on going to November. But you see the pattern is that the frontal attack by Walker creates resistance. The fascist Snyder in Michigan is also doing a frontal attack, and there's a certain amount of resistance there. Certainly in Ohio, the fascist direct attack by Kasich proved to be so crude that the backlash developed. 62% to 38% of the Ohio Buckeyes voted against the fascist austerity plan of Kasich last November. But Mitch Daniels, by comparison, was able to ram through the union-busting, wage-gouging, right-to-work law, which he was able to enact. And he stymied and confounded the Democratic Party. So I think the Bilderbergers look at him and they say, Daniels, there's a union buster who gets things done, not too overt, not too rhetorical, a little bit like Obama in that sense, but of course much, much more radical in the attack, right? Obama's attack is the death of 1,000 cuts, right? Daniels is somewhere between the chainsaw and the death of 1,000 cuts. Can this idea go through? Well, we're looking at two things, right? One is the one I just mentioned, which is Wisconsin. If Walker can remain in power in Wisconsin with the help of the arch-reactionary Koch brothers, then that means that things look very grim for the United States. The other one is Ireland. It would seem, according to the reports I've heard, I wouldn't want to jump to conclusions, but Ireland seems to be voting for the burning or arch-reactionary austerity plan spread by Madame Merkel. So Ireland seems to be knuckling under. And that leaves us with Greece. And we're going to talk about, we're going to get a report from Athens. We're going to get a report here from one of the better of the Bilderberg commentators. What I see, therefore, from Bilderberg, a sharp right turn, a turn towards reactionary policies, neo-fascism, ultimately fascism. Ron Paul, typical example of this, right-wing man of Romney. Rand Paul's bid for the vice presidency, I would say, is failing, although Rand Paul is out there campaigning for Romney. Couldn't be clearer. He's endorsed him, in effect, if not technically with the exact words. Ron Paul's achievement is to make barbarian genocide against the American people presentable, something you can discuss in polite society, right? You're not thrown out. You're not consigned to the Nuremberg track. But, oh, yes, it can be taken seriously. And, again, I am appalled by what Tucker and some others are saying, that the Bilderberg is afraid of Ron Paul because he's a patriot. And as a patriot, these people are neo-Confederate secessionists in many cases. There's no patriotism. They're patriots like Jefferson Davis is a patriot, or Alexander Stevens, or some of these other people. Therefore, what's the policy universe that comes out of this? What does the right turn look like? Between June and December, we'll know a lot. Suppose the Supreme Court in June says that Obamacare is unconstitutional. Now, the reasons they claim to be against it are not the real reasons. They don't want you to get the idea that you have a right to health care. And instead, we do have a right to health care. Franklin D. Roosevelt, Economic Bill of Rights, January 1944, the American people have a right to health care. They're trying to roll back all of these rights to the degree that they've ever been accomplished in whole or in part. That is a big step. Now, suppose the Supreme Court comes with obiter dicta. I've talked about this. They can say, Obamacare is unconstitutional, and by the way, obiter dictum, we think Social Security is unconstitutional, and so is Medicare, and Medicaid, and the minimum wage, and S-chip, and Head Start, and child labor laws, and WIC. You get the idea. For the 50 million, austerity and genocide. That's the right turn. Extreme austerity with Romney, Rich Daniels. Back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Again, if you're in the German-speaking area, please go to Kopp Verlag online, K-O-P-P. I have some reports up there, some photographs too, various of these oligarchs coming in through the main gate in their darkened limousine. Some of them you can see. Henri Castries, one of the top honchos of Bilderberg, is there, right, with not enough tinted glass to protect him, and his shades don't do the job either. One of them you can see hiding behind a newspaper. It's actually funny. So some of them are a little bit on the defensive. Now, we are hoping to have an interview now. I don't know whether this is set up. Maybe the control room there can help me with some idea. We were going to go to one of the leading European, British in this case, authorities on Bilderberg. But let me just hope that comes out right now. We had a discussion here with some people from the Intel Hub, Shepard Ambellis and Jason Burmis and Alex of that group, and they were talking about the obvious thing that the oligarchs of the Bilderberg are promoting: depopulation, right? The genocide of the human race. That's the integral part of the oligarchical program, going back to Kissinger, right? The National Security Memorandum 200, and the Stockholm Environmental Conference, the Bucharest Population Conference, the Rome Food Conference of 1974, where I clashed with some of these people. Remember that you've got 50 million Americans, 50 million, in dire poverty. They are there because of Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton betrayed them. He destroyed the welfare aid to mothers with dependent children, title of the Social Security Act of 1935. That is why these people are so destitute. They have no jobs. We got 30 million unemployed plus, and these are those people plus their families and dependents. They have no health care, and they live on food stamps. And along comes Ron Paul, of course, and says, well, what we're going to do for you is to free you by cutting your food stamp allowance by 62 to 63%. Instead of having about $1.50 per person per meal, it's going to go down to 58 cents per person per meal. Recipe for rickets, pellagra, scurvy, and what else have you. I'm sorry, I have some noise in the background, and let's see if we can continue. Franklin D. Roosevelt said, "I see 1/3 of a nation ill-clad, ill-housed, ill-fed." This is something like it. It's 50 million Americans who need food stamps to have dinner tonight. Now, this is very concrete. Those are Americans. They're out there. If we don't have food stamps fully funded, they're going to go hungry tonight, and within a week they're going to starve. And 58-cent meals, that's a recipe for slow death. In tortilla flats, right? A diet of tortillas and beans and nothing else is a diet for slow death. So is that the plan that we have? Again, for the people who won World War II, who defeated communism and Stalinism and fascism, who cracked the secrets of the atom and went to the moon, they're supposed to live on 58 cents because the Austrian school says that otherwise they're in the culture of dependency. All right, let's take a look at some other things. The unemployment statistics look bad for Obama. I think you're going to see a lot of things are going to be cooked to look bad for Obama, and part of it is the impact of the Bilderberg group. Clinton is soft on Romney. Clinton says, "Oh no, we can't attack people because they're hedge fund hyenas or zombie bankers and asset strippers and job destroyers. We have to talk about their plans for the future." Hey, Bill, I'm sorry. I know you don't want to talk about the past and how you destroyed welfare as we knew it. The worst thing you ever did, a cowardly, treacherous act, and you didn't even need to. You could have gotten reelected against Bob Dole in 1996 without even having to do that. Well, he's out campaigning. I'm glad he's in Wisconsin campaigning against Walker, but he's out there saying, "Oh no, let's not be too hard on Romney." I think that's another indication, right? Clinton not far from these circles, clearly enough, and it seems to me that you're going to see multiplication of signs. Romney, and then if it turns out to be Daniels, then it's an open and shut case. As a result of this, though, the job statistics being so weak, right, the weakest job creation, we got the Dow went down 225 this morning, and so forth. So this is what I see as the actual content of these meetings. They are not scared of Greece leaving the euro. They want Greece to leave the euro. And I would also invite you to look at this. Who are they afraid of? Are they afraid of Ron Paul? Are they afraid of Occupy Wall Street? Or are they afraid of Alexis Tsipras and Syriza? Right? To ask the question is to answer it. What did they do with Ron Paul? Well, Ron Paul was handled with kid gloves, right? Nobody really, exposed him for his racist newsletters and all these Confederate types that infest his campaign. Peter Thiel gave his campaign, a super PAC supporting Ron Paul, $2.7 million of funding. That doesn't sound like they're afraid of Ron Paul. Looks to me like they're backing Ron Paul. Might suggest to some people that they control Ron Paul. Then we look at ad busters, right? We just had little Julian Assange, Lord Julian Assange, cavorting with a group of so-called leaders of Occupy in his program this week. Above all, the pseudo-anthropologist, quackademic David Graeber, and a bunch of other, I would say, disturbed individuals to some extent. All anarchists. Every one of them an anarchist wrecker, a dyed-in-the-wool, radical subjectivist follower of Max Stirner and God knows what others, right? Bakunin, Kropotkin, you name it, right? Small is beautiful. Adbusters, Graeber are the people who aborted the mass strike potential of the Occupy movement. And I don't think Bilderberg is afraid of them either. I think with this, in this case, if we go to Soros and we ask Soros, what does he think of Adbusters and the Situationist International, he'll be very kindly disposed towards them, let us say, and perhaps he'll back that up with some concrete generosity. Now let's look at Alexis Tsipras and the Syriza movement in Greece.
Hello?
Is this something they're afraid of? Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I was actually on the air. I was just sitting here listening to
How
you.
long have you been there, Charlie?
Oh, hours. I've just been sitting here listening on the end of the phone. I do apologise. I thought I was going to hang up, though. I thought it'd been forgotten.
I'm really sorry. I was hoping that the control room would tell me that you're there.
Oh, well, we'll do our own bit of
wonderful.
controlling.
Anyway,
You carry on.
Okay, no, let me introduce you now because we want to hear from you. This is wonderful news. This is Charlie Skelton. People know him as one of the honest and capable opponents of Bilderberg, and I believe it was Charlie in 2007. Am I right? In Greece, who was severely
2009.
harassed. Sorry?
2009.
2009. Okay, so 2009 in Greece, Charlie was harassed in Greece, and Charlie is actually the guy who called forth this movement. I mean, other people, sort of Johnny-come-latelys, claim that they did it, but Charlie is the one. Charlie Skelton was reporting on this for the London Guardian. Now, this is an amazing feat that he's performed to get this kind of analysis into the London Guardian. We won't go into all the details, but that's really a feat. And I have to thank Charlie for the write-up that he did of our 9/11 conference on Walker Street at the INN World Report Studios back in September, and he was there, wrote that up as really one of the best articles ever written about the 9/11 question in any mainstream news medium. So he's here. His charming wife Hannah. Welcome to Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Chantilly, Virginia, reporting on the finance oligarchs of the Bilderberg Group. I'm just introducing Charlie Skelton, the distinguished correspondent of the London Guardian, one of the leading critics, opponents of Bilderberg worldwide. Charlie, we mentioned now your role on Bilderberg, your role on 9/11 Truth, but you are also what many Americans maybe don't know, and maybe some other countries, you're also one of the leading writers for British television, and indeed your specialty is comic writing. Could you just tell us something about that at the beginning?
Oh, really? Yeah, well, I mean, that's mainly what I do. The other is, I mean, I wouldn't like to think of myself as an authority on Bilderberg. I know a dozen people at least that know twice as much as I do, 3 times. But I mainly just write sort of jokes, or what I tried to make jokes. This is how articulate I am. So it's why. I try and write jokes for British TV programs, and but it is kind of a hobby for me, Bilderberg. The hobby that began 4 Bilderbergs ago in Greece, and it's something that it's one of those subjects that the more you read about it, the more you realise there's more to read.
And if people want to see your comedy writing, what program could they watch?
Well, I don't know if they can get 8 out of 10 Cats, which is a Channel 4 program, or 10 O'Clock Live. That's a more political thing. But mainly I'm just writing jokes about various celebrities being fat and stupid.
Okay. I just want to stress for people that Charlie is a really an eminent personality in Britain and far beyond. All right, Charlie, if you heard my whole long-winded spiel here, maybe you want to just give your take on Bilderberg, your take on the commentators, the people who purport to know what's going on inside, and take it from there.
First of all, I'd say that I'm not. I'm first and foremost, I'm less an enemy of Bilderberg and more an enemy of the absence of media here. And I'm really only here, in my mind, to sort of shame the rest of, well, particularly the British mainstream press, but the rest of the mainstream media as well. That if I'm, the main voice of the mainstream press there, then something has gone very, very badly wrong. And I see myself as a kind of seagull of shame hung around the neck of the mainstream media, it's if that's the correct analogy. But so most of all, I object to the way it's overlooked, and obviously we all have our theories about that. Secondarily to that, I object to, the kind of oligarchical shenanigans you've been talking about that are all set to continue destroying our world, etc.
All right. So, what do you see as so far? Right, we saw some of these people arrive yesterday. We now have the list of names. I also noticed I had to laugh when the correspondent of the London Times couldn't get in. The lady had come to try to get in, and she couldn't get in. And then she came to interview me, of all people, outside. And the German television ZDF, that's the second program, that's quite big, the sort of Christian Democratic version. ORF of Austria was there. Spanish television was there. Maybe something's changing in that regard.
I think there is a change, and the Washington Times did quite a nice piece. The Daily Mail, a very mainstream British paper, has done an extremely measured piece. The words tinfoil hat are kind of slipping away from the coverage, and they're actually starting to talk about it as the thing that it is, which is something that seems to have changed very recently. And I would say, yes, I would say there has been a shift in the last couple of years towards more mainstream coverage. And by mainstream coverage, I mean actually talking about the importance of the event, not just, my goodness, aren't they lunatics, these people who talk about it or think about it or worry about it.
Well, I would point to two things as far as I can see. The presence of Anatoly Chubais of Russia is bad. He's much more important than the sort of token institutional representatives who might be pro-Putin. But we've got this guy, Garry Kasparov, who runs these color revolutions with his friend Limonov, right, the national Bolshevik. This looks like I thought this was a real sort of primitive affront to Putin and company, right, to get one of his most scurrilous opponents and elevate him, right, because you've got these international bankers sitting next to Kasparov. This is really strange.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. It's a new there's new faces this year, a lot more new faces, and there's a new chairman, Henri de Castries, the chair of AXA, and as I described him earlier, in my piece, is a breath of fresh money in that coming to Bilderberg, and you sense it looking at the list that there's a changing of the guard. And I mean, last year it really kicked off last year with all of the high-tech people coming in, and some of them, the Facebook and the PayPal people, and some of them have moved up into the steering group, like Peter Thiel, the PayPal, Facebook guy, and Craig Mundy from Microsoft is there, and and then we get the regulars, Eric Schmidt, and now the Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn is coming regularly, and so there's been a real shift towards the tech, and a shift towards kind of younger people, and so they're reinventing themselves. These people have got to stay on top somehow. They can't do that by being left behind.
We may disagree about this, but when I look at that group, I say, here are the young wolves. Here are the young predators, right? Here are the people who don't understand anything about a labor force, about the need for a standard of living, about a social safety net. They're not interested in any of that. These are people who are tending towards anarcho-capitalism. It may be that their constant obsession with computers and cybernetics, and also then with derivatives and speculation, has given a kind of autistic tinge to their thinking. Yeah. And then in the middle of it, we've got Peter Thiel, giving $2.7 million, investing that in the Ron Paul campaign, right? Ron Paul being the most extreme austerity ghoul operating in the U.S. with his program for $1 trillion of cuts in the federal budget, cutting the food stamp budget by 62% for 50 million people here who would be thrown into starvation. In other words, what I see is a greater cruelty, a greater indifference to human suffering than even in the older generation. Right? They had some idea of keeping society going to be able to exploit it. These people, it seems to be a quick rip-off, right? The old difference between the stationary bandit and the roving bandit, right? We had stationary bandits who wanted to rob us over time, but now we got the roving bandits who want to basically rape us and run.
Yeah. And I know exactly what you mean about the kind of autistic shift towards tech. I think that's exactly right. And I think, just to broaden it slightly, the flip side to the however you want to call it, the reduction in numbers of the human race, how that sort of meme. The flip side of that is that it's not just genocide on the human race. It's also a movement towards a persistently more mechanized and roboticized humanity in a kind of transhumanist sort of dream where out of this nightmare will emerge a kind of new creature. The half man, half robot. I mean, I know that sounds a bit far-fetched, but you can sort of sketch out the vague movements that we're coming towards. I mean, you could say that we're sitting here in Chantilly in the high-tech robotics capital of the world. There's any number of crazy schemes going on here.
The other thing I would stress about these people is that they seem to they want to come on the scene as self-made venture capitalist entrepreneurs pulling themselves on their own bootstraps. Most of these people were subsidized by the National Security Agency, right? This famous InQtel operation, right, which gave the seed money, I believe, for Google, and then the Google Earth was a project of this Operation Keyhole of the federal government. In other words, these are finance capitalists, as so often created by the government, and then they take the money and run.
Well, Sean Parker's a good example, the guy who sort of pushed Facebook in its early days, and he was recruited when he was 16 or something by the CIA, they get these people early, and there's a strong presence of the intelligence services, obviously in Bilderberg, and it has been since the beginning,
Johnny,
and still is.
The music, we got to take these hard breaks. That's how we're set up. Time for the obscene buying and selling here. So we'll be back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. Keep it up with all of this at Tarpley.net, Webster G. Tarpley Twitter feed, and in German areas, KOP, K-O-P-P, Kopfverlag website. You'll see my reports and even some photos up there. We're honored to be talking to Charlie Skelton, correspondent of the London Guardian, also one of the leading writers for British television, a remarkable person who's here with his wife and looking at this. So, Charlie, what are the strategic conclusions that we can draw? Where are we headed?
Where are we headed? Well, what I don't think is we're headed towards any kind of a more transparent world, which is what it's what the Occupy movement is. I've been a part of that in London. Is what one of the things that it asks for. It's one of the things that every single politician these days spouts is that transparency is their number one most precious policy. And what I think we're heading towards is a world where our general public interaction is more and more transparent, but the kind of Bilderbergian behind closed doors, oligarchical meeting of bankers and their minions is every bit as closed off as it ever has been. They occasionally throw us a few scraps of a kind of a pretend press release or which things like, we discussed China and we're meant to be satisfied with that. Oh, you discussed China. I see it. Fine. That narrows that down. And so just in terms of that, I'm not particularly heartened. Although, as I said earlier, I'm heartened by the clunky, gradual picking up of speed of the mainstream media in dealing with this subject. But whether it's in time, I don't know. We'll see.
The one thing that strikes me is, as long as it was possible to keep the Bilderberger group secret and off the screen, there was no need for extensive disinformation campaigns. Now, the obvious merit of demonstrations and activities like the one you and I were at yesterday and today too is that. And it actually, by the way, if people want to come, it's going to be on Saturday, right? This program goes on the air Saturday. You can come at 1:00 in the afternoon on Saturday. That's the big day for people who work for a living. But once it gets out, then the disinformation begins to flourish. In other words, what I see is that there's a whole lot more coverage, but a lot of it is pure disinformation.
Right. I mean, there's always been. You always get this from the the kind of attack dogs of the system, like I don't know, people like Robert Kagan or whatever, or David Aronovich, whatever. They come out and make their statements about Bilderberg that it's a old boys club, or they're eating, they're just playing a bit of golf, or just having a nice snack every so often.
On
that kind
Robert
of thing.
Kagan, right? Robert Kagan is the Romney campaign now. So that's Romney basically saying, don't look at my backers.
Really? Yeah, well, that's good. I mean, he's Project for the New American Century, isn't he? I mean, he's got some good pedigree.
The neocons are looking at Romney now as their ticket back into power, and I think Romney has about 25 key advisors. I think 17 or 18 of them are Bush-era neocons. So watch out.
It's amazing. I mean, you look at someone like Romney, and then you look at some of the leading British politicians at the moment, and it's a terribly sad thing being a voter these days to see these people that, I mean, they try as hard as they can to pretend that they give any kind of a fig leaf for the average person, but they almost can't carry it off, and it's getting to the point where they sort of don't really bother. I mean, someone like Romney is so far removed from giving anything to. So anyway, that's quite depressing. Well, I mean, then again, you get the technocrats at the moment where they don't worry about elections too much; they just pop their people into power.
If you can take some minutes to tell us about Britain, because we followed these local elections where the Cameron people, the Tories, the Conservatives were defeated. That seemed to be a pretty big defeat. What is the state of the resistance inside Britain? Occupy London was there, maybe not there now, or...
Well, yeah, Occupy London still is there. And I mean, I wouldn't be too hard on the Occupy movement because I've witnessed it firsthand, and I've seen how there's an internal battle constantly between people who are genuinely trying to make a difference and trying to critique the system that's, crushing them, and people who are trying to subvert and co-opt this movement. And you can actually witness it. You can see. I've seen paid people from lobby groups working the Occupy movement. I've seen, I've seen the Occupy movement respond by, for example, one of the best things it ever did was to move the socialist worker people, the hard left from Britain, out of the Occupy movement and say, look, get out, take your flags down. We're not the hard left, whatever we are. And who knows? We're not that. And then you come to today, and you've got things like Occupy Bilderberg, and I think that's an incredibly refreshing two words to put together. Occupy and Bilderberg. Instead of saying, well, I don't know what the Occupy movement is, but here it is at Bilderberg. It suddenly feels a bit more targeted. It feels a bit more real. You have things like Occupy Monsanto or whatever. So I think that the Occupy movement is constantly reinventing itself at the moment, and I think in a reasonably good way. I think it doesn't really mean anything in one sense, Occupy, but when I see Occupy Bilderberg, I think that's both. I saw a woman with a Ron Paul flag and I know you're not a fan, but with a Ron Paul flag and an Occupy flag, and that's broadly speaking the left and the right. I'm caricaturing it, but broadly speaking, the left and the right coming together in one woman standing outside Bilderberg. In other words, the kind of left-right stuff really does dissolve as soon as you get near Bilderberg. You've got people like Peter Mandelson and Kenneth Clarke from different sides of the political spectrum in Britain.
Maybe just for our listeners, if you could say a few words about these people, Mandelson and Clarke.
Well, Mandelson was kind of the creator of the Blair years. He fashioned New Labour. He's like the Robert Kagan of New Labour in Britain, and Kenneth Clarke is one of our kind of national treasures, I guess you'd call him. He's a wonderful, jovial old fellow, and at least that's what he comes across as. But he's been on the steering group of Bilderberg for many years now, and is our Lord Chancellor and Secretary of State for Justice, and a little bit of a conflict of interest possibly there. So anyway, but they're on the left and the right, and the left-right paradigm just melt away around Bilderberg. It just doesn't mean anything whatsoever, and that's quite nice. Occupy Bilderberg, same thing. It's all just, it boils down to some people objecting to the agendas of crony capitalism or whatever they might like to see to describe what's going on.
The only thing I would object is that this poor lady, she wants to fight Bilderberg, but then her candidate is somebody who is in many ways the tentacle of Bilderberg, gets $2.7 million from the steering committee.
We can't all be as enlightened as you, Webster. But I would say that there are steps in right directions that are I think it's okay to go run with for a bit.
My question is this, right? You look at these Bilderbergers. I don't think they're afraid of Ron Paul at all. They pay him, right? They've given him the $2.7 million. I don't think they're afraid of Occupy because they say, well, George Soros, maybe he wasn't here this year, but he's got Occupy under control. I think what they're really afraid of is Syriza in Greece, Alexis Tsipras, where we have a debt freeze, debt moratorium, the austerity rollback, stop privatizations. In other words, and he's also succeeded, right? In I don't know, the SWP in Britain, I think that is a very dubious group. But with Syriza, you've got 12 components that have been welded together to a block, which is now going to go from 4% to 30%, and may well be the biggest party in the parliament.